What is going on, everyone? I am back, and as promised, I'm coming at you with another auction draft, but this time I'm going to highlight one of the popular auction draft strategies, and that is the conservative drafting approach. So, if you're wondering what is the conservative approach, well, let me break it down for you, at least in the way that I define it for myself. So, first and foremost, the first factor that I look at is I want to wait until these top notch guys kind of go because I don't want to be spending more than $35 on any player on my roster. So that was a personal goal that I set, and it was something that I achieved. Now, the reason that I do this is because this accomplishes several things. First and foremost, it lets all the other members in your league kind of spend themselves out so they don't have as much bidding power later on. And then it also allows you to bring together a much more balanced roster. So you might not have that one superstar, but altogether, your roster is going to be complete with a bunch of guys that are still in a pretty good tier. But the thing is, most importantly, they're going to be very close together. Now, on top of this, what I also try and do is maintain the bidding power throughout the draft. So what does that mean? Well, basically, for the majority of the draft, I try to have the most amount of possible betting money. And again, the reason that I do this is because it allows me to pretty much guarantee that I'm going to be able to get the guys that I really want. And on top of that, if there's a situation where a lot of people have spent a lot of their money and I still have the majority of mine, I can kind of set the market for where a certain player will actually sell for. And that's pretty awesome because it kind of allows you to get them for a little bit cheaper and save your money later on. And now, one of the last things that I do want to point out is since you are employing a conservative strategy and waiting for some of these top-notch players to go, this kind of approach will take longer. You're going to have to invest in a longer draft in order to fill out your roster, but that's how it is. I think in the long run, it's still beneficial because not only do you put a very balanced roster together, but you also probably will have in the long run one of the best benches in your league. So with all of that out of the way, let me actually get into the draft, how it went down. And again, I'm going to fast forward a little bit and jump into my actual selections and how the roster filled out. So my first selection was actually a guy that you guys saw me take in this last auction draft that I put out, and that was Drew Brees. And the top quarterbacks are already gone. Rodgers, Brady had all gone, and they had gone for nearly $30. And again, I got Drew Brees for what I thought was a very good bargain at $13. I've said it before, he's going to finish in the top 3 of fantasy quarterbacks. Go ahead, especially in auction drafts, invest $13, $14 in Drew Brees. It'll be worth it. There's somewhat of a drop-off after Brees for quarterbacks because Luck is hurt. You don't know how that's going to play out. And even guys that I'm really high on, like Mariota and Winston, aren't a sure thing. So that's why I invest $13 in Brees. Next, we've got a guy in Ezekiel Elliott that thank goodness that his stock dropped so much because this suspension, obviously, it's unfortunate. You won't have Zeke, one of the top 3 running backs available for the pretty much first half of your fantasy season. But the thing that this does is, especially in auction drafts, it drops his value almost twofold. So he goes from a 60-something dollar player to around the $30 mark. And I was able to get him for $32. He was one of my more expensive players, but still, the fact that I'm going to be able to get him later in the season, and I only spent 30-something bucks on him, and he'll still be one of those top-notch guys, is something that I love. I love that potential. Because even though you're being conservative, you're still being able to get one of those top-notch superstars. Now, moving on, the next guy that I targeted was DeAndre Hopkins, and he was actually the player that I spent the most money on. I got him for 34 bucks, so right under my $35 limit that I set for myself. And I think he would be a little bit more valuable if this was a standard league, but this is a PPR league, so his value maybe not as high, but at the same time, I would say he's a very valuable player because look at what he did 2 years ago when Hoyer was there. I mean, Hoyer, by no stretch of the imagination, is a superstar at quarterback, yet Hopkins put together one of the best fantasy seasons in the wide receiver position then. All that Houston literally has to do is decide on a quarterback and let that quarterback build chemistry with Hopkins. That's all they have to do. So hopefully they won't screw that up too much, and either Savage or Deshaun Watson can get him the ball. Now, moving on, the next guy that I was able to snag is Keenan Allen. So with Keenan Allen, I've said it before and I'll say it again, a PPR stud. All he has to do is stay healthy. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Keenan Allen. To me, as long as he's healthy, he's a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. And as far as the value goes, he is a steal because I only spent 30 bucks on him, and compared to some guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Des Bryant, guys of that nature, Demaryius Thomas, I think Keenan Allen can have a better season than all of them, and I get him much cheaper than those guys. Next, moving on, this is kind of where I stumbled a little bit, and the reason I say that is because I had obviously a hole to fill in the running back position because I knew Zeke would be gone for the first 6 games. So I tried to get another pretty decent running back. It backfired a little bit. First of all, I was targeting Marshawn Lynch, and I barely missed out on him. I didn't realize just for how cheap he went. He went for $26, which is a great deal to me, especially because, again, playing behind that offensive line. And then my backup was Kareem Hunt, but man, that hype for Kareem Hunt is at an all-time high right now. I don't quite think it's justified, especially for where he's been going, not only in auction drafts, but in standard drafts. In auction drafts, the guy that got Kareem Hunt spent about $37 for him, and I don't think I can justify that just yet for an unproven rookie. So what I did instead was I got Bilal Powell, and I got him for 24 bucks, so not bad. I was happy with it, and one of the reasons that I'm happy with going to Bilal Powell is that, for those of you that are worried, and saw Matt Forte kind of star in that third preseason game for the Jets, I've also been hearing a lot of reports pretty much the day after that they're also actively trying to shop Matt Forte. So what that tells me is they favor Bilal Powell, and even if he doesn't start right away, I think he'll still get a good share of that backfield in the first couple games, and that it's only a matter of time until he takes over completely. So for that reason, I really like him. He's pretty much the best receiver on that team, so he's going to be a PPR stud. From there, we had my selection of my first tight end, and again, here it was between Travis Kelce and Greg Olson for me. I think the value for Olson got raised up a little bit because there were some teams that still needed a tight end and were kind of willing to pay a little bit more money. But like I said, the fact that I was able to hold on to my money and control the bidding board allowed me to pretty much guarantee that I'm going to get my guy in Greg Olson, and that's exactly what I did. I spent 15 bucks on him, maybe a little bit too much, because his value, I believe, was around $13. But I'm still happy with it. I think he'll be, like I said before, a top 5 tight end, probably a top 3 tight end. So I really like Olson, and that was my guy. Next, filling out the flex position, I targeted Martavius Bryant, and to me, I think he's an excellent flex player. And I was able to get him for a steal at $14. Again, at this point, a lot of players had drafted the majority of their teams and spent the majority of their amount of allotted money. So I got him 14 bucks, pretty good deal considering I think he'll be on par with guys like Keenan Allen, and maybe even DeAndre Hopkins. And even imagine, what if Antonio Brown somehow gets hurt? Martavis Bryant then becomes a top 5 wide receiver. So from that perspective, also, it's definitely worth getting Martavis Bryant. Now, moving on, we have got actually the Seahawks defense. And as far as defenses and kickers go, I would say, there's no reason to spend more than $1, maximum $2. And I mean, that's exactly what I did. I spent $2 on a defense. I might get grief for that, but I don't really care. I had the money. I wasn't strapped for cash, so I went ahead, pulled the trigger for the Seahawks defense. Then from there, I actually started paying attention to my bench a little bit and grabbed a guy in Pierre Garçon, who I really like as a potential breakout. He is pretty much the main weapon in San Francisco. And in case Keenan Allen does get hurt, I will have Pierre Garçon to plug in. I was able to get Garçon for 10 bucks. Again, pretty good deal to me. And then addressed the kicker position afterwards. Got Matt Bryant on the Falcons for 2 bucks. But again, I don't think that's such a big deal. To me, he's probably going to be either the best kicker in all of fantasy or the second best behind Justin Tucker. And then the last guy that I actually added to my final roster was Darren McFadden. So ideally, I would have had another running back outside of McFadden to play, and maybe a guy like I said, Kareem Hunt, Marshawn Lynch. But instead, I just went with McFadden. So I'm pretty much only at 2 running backs. Only have got the McFadden-Zeke combo and then Bilal Powell. So maybe that's my weak point on this team as of right now. But I went ahead, got him only for $4. So to me, that was definitely worth it. And in that regard, that finished off my actual roster. But before I concluded drafting, I made sure to add a bunch of guys to my queue. And since I was dominating the bidding process and I had the most amount of money left over, it's pretty much a guarantee that I would have gotten them. So I'll share with you guys who I put on that queue. Now, I put in Tyrell Williams. Like I said before, in case Keenan Allen does get hurt, I'm going to go ahead and stash Tyrell Williams because we all saw what he can do last year if given the opportunity. Next, I also added Dante Moncrief. He was the most expensive player that I put on my queue. He was at $5. Tyrell Williams was at $3. And playing on the final year of his rookie contract, I think Moncrief can have a big year. Then I went ahead, added Thomas Rawls. He was for $3. I figured kind of a diamond in the rough situation. He is, as of right now, listed as the number 1 back in Seattle, even though they still got Eddie Lacy. So I like his chances. He just has to stay healthy. Then to finish it off, I added Jaquiz Rogers. I think during the first couple of weeks while Martin is suspended, Jaquiz has the potential to be a really nice flex play. So added him on the queue for $2, and then finally added Jameis Winston, who I think as a dark horse MVP candidate that a lot of people are taking in like the first 10 rounds, somewhere over there, or maybe first 8 rounds in standard leagues. He goes for a steal here at only having a rank of $2, which is amazing to me. So altogether, all those players in my queue had a value of $15. I still had $20 left over, so that would have guaranteed that I still even have some more spending money afterwards. So with that pretty much concludes the roster that I would have put together. Now, something that I do want to point out as far as kind of a downfall with the conservative strategy. So you kind of noticed that I would have had theoretically $5 left over. So what does that mean? Well, that basically means those $5 I could have invested in a better player, and I kind of wasted that money. So that's one of my warnings about the conservative draft strategy. first of all, make sure that you are comfortable with not necessarily having a superstar on the roster, but at the same time having a very balanced roster, which I do think at some point um, does hold a lot of weight. But at the same time, you have to plan this very well, because you don't want to have, when it's all said and done, a lot of money left over. Because I mean, if you could have gotten a better tier player than someone on your roster, then then why not? So for me, um, that's pretty obvious. So just do a lot of planning when it comes to that, and make sure that you don't have a lot of money left over. And then finally, as far as grading my results, I would say the one thing that I'm critical of is how my running back situation turned out. Ideally, would have liked to have gotten um, another running back in maybe like Kareem Hunt or Marshawn Lynch, like I said. But it is what it is. I secured McFadden, so I still think it'll be good. I like the potential Bilal Powell. And altogether, even though I did do a lot of waiting and kind of don't have that top guy in a David Johnson and a Le'Veon Bell or any of those top receivers, I honestly still think that this is probably um, a B plus roster. If Bilal Powell has a really good year, maybe an A minus roster, and if Keenan can stay healthy. So I really liked the roster. I think it turned out really well. The draft strategy definitely was the thing that allowed me to do this. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree? Do you think this is a valid strategy? Would you do this, or would you favor something like an aggressive draft strategy when it comes to these auction drafts? And just so you know, I will put that video out as well. I'll make a more aggressive auction draft strategy video, so keep a lookout for that. And as always, let me know what you guys think. How did I do? Like, comment, and subscribe. And in the meantime, I'll see you guys in future videos.